Hi, everyone. Welcome to A Way of God's Remembrance with Michael Hayes. This is presented by Awake to Love. I'm Lee here with Cindy. We are the volunteer Zoom hosts and so grateful that you are here. This gathering with Michael will be a 1 hour gathering. Next week, Alicia will join Michael, and that will be a 2 hour gathering. Now, I will share Michael's words to bring clarity to the focus and format of this gathering. This is a weekly gathering for those seeking greater awareness of their true nature. There are many paths and approaches to higher consciousness and to greater awakening to who we truly are. The essence, the truth of all these paths is more about remembering who we are and have always been, rather than becoming something different or more than we have seen ourselves to be. A way of God's remembrance goes to the heart, to the intention of all the paths. This is what we will explore together each week. Michael will share thoughts and awarenesses that come forward as relevant and purposeful for our time together, followed by questions and answers related to what he shares about. We will begin with an invocation of light to help support us all to be in collective alignment. After the light invocation, we will play a recording to lead us in on-I-Q chanting, and Ron is standing by for the illumination. Take it away, Ron.
I'm actually sitting.
Okay.
All right. Well, Lord God of all creation, we come before you at this time with joy in our hearts, joy at the essence that we all are, joy at the remembrance of our essential nature as divine spiritual beings, learning from our time here on earth. We stand forward in that awareness, knowing that there is no againstness unless we decide there needs to be some. And even then, it is falsely perceived. To find the truth, we come to places like Michael, one of the higher beings, and ask for his guidance that we may see our way clear into beyond the essence of who we are, but into the essence of who we all are. And for this opportunity, we give our thanks. So be it.
Welcome, everyone, to a way of God's remembrance. Titled that way because more and more my experience has been that it is not a becoming, but a remembering that sets us free. I have a guest here with me here from the spirit world, so I'm adjusting to that to see what might be talked about. There's a lot of turmoil and tension in the world that is obvious to many, and there's a call going out from spirit to those who would serve the higher possibility, the higher potential of mankind and this planet. Look deep within themselves and, if so willing, to choose to be an ambassador of light at this time and to commit themselves to be used as instruments of light to the service of the greater purpose of God as it plays out in this world and in this dimension of life. There are many forces at play that would obstruct the higher possibility of the planet and maintain the planet upon a course, a condition that was formulated to be purposeful for the planet in another time epoch of the planet by those forces that were privileged to have authority and have direction in terms of how the planet was to evolve, to unfold, to dispense the lessons and the learning to all the consciousness that were participating. There was a shift in that dynamic that recognized that there was a greater option of growth and transformation, and that each and every consciousness could be made available to this greater choice. A resistance pattern appeared to that option of the greater choice. And so the planet continues in this dance between these two potentials. Every consciousness will eventually find its way to its own version of truth, to its own higher guidance related to this potential. This, though, is a consequential time, a fulcrum time, in terms of how the movement of karma, how the movement of consciousness will play out for all concerned, for all participating in this planetary pattern. So for those that are willing to be utilized, to bring greater light and greater clarity to the consciousnesses that are participating here in this planetary pattern at this time, it is both asked and offered that those willing to be utilized consent in their consciousness that a greater manifestation of light might be available into this world as a counterbalance to an energy of confusion and disillusionment that has been extended, trying to sway the direction of mankind back towards that old ancient possibility. Everyone knows this is going on in some level of their beingness. The invitation is to become more awake and more conscious and therefore more available to be utilized in the greater light action. Many thanks. One of the byproducts of this remembrance that we talk about is that when the consciousness, or we might say our consciousness, frees itself from the limitations of individuation or the limitations of attachment to individual expression. One of the byproducts is there's an openness in that consciousness to the totality of consciousness. And in the totality of consciousness, that includes all consciousness. And that inclusion of all consciousness also includes consciousness that, in a sense, has done the time and space experience before and served in the time and space experience before and transcended the time and space experience. And that consciousness, which includes all those consciousness, is available into the purposes of remembrance. And out of that, occasionally, consciousness do extend and bring forward awareness, service, opportunity, blessings, and let's just say a boost into the remembrance of each consciousness that is still struggling with the forgetting, yet has been anointed to remember and has been stirred awake to that potential and is consciously choosing as best it can to come to that remembrance. And so we do have that opportunity to partake of this support when it's extended. And tonight was one of those times. There's been extension of support in other of the classes, I'm not call this a class, but other of these gatherings that have come in and worked and offered direction and guidance. And the direction and guidance is nice, but more so it's the consciousness they carry, which is very, very conscious and precipitate activation of remembrance and awareness in each of us. So I'm grateful for that. And I don't control that. I just show up and surrender to that comes present. And tonight was one of those nights where there was and is a support from the spirit world that was more unique, and therefore in cooperation with that, that's what I shared. I'm really open. I don't have a lot more to share after that message came forth. I kind of, maybe that sets the stage more for what we talk about tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to Lee, and we'll just see where we go from here. And he'll have some information guidance, and then we'll do some sharing. Thank you all for attending and listening, and bless you.
Thank you so much, Michael. I have guidelines for questions. Questions are to be about a way of God's remembrance and what Michael has shared. To ask a question, please raise your Zoom hand. You can find that by hovering near the bottom of your Zoom window. Click on the React button. A pop-up appears. Choose Raise Hand. Please also turn on your video for full participation. And if you are on a low bandwidth connection and are unable to, so be it. Most important, and since so many of us have had the blessing of working with Michael over so many years for assistance in clearing so many things, this is not that. Please do not ask questions of a personal nature and do not ask Michael for assistance in clearing. Questions are to be for your benefit, the benefit of those of us gathered, and those who will participate via the archives. We ask that you look to the integrity of your intentions before asking a question of Michael, and thank you for your cooperation. Finally, here is the legal consent. By raising your hand and asking questions of Michael, you are giving full consent to Awake to Love to make the audio and video of this gathering, including your sharing, available as online archives for anyone to access. Please do not raise your hand and do not share unless you are in full agreement. Thank you.
All right. Well, if anybody, David Bransky. Hello, David.
Hello, Michael. Like it's been a while. It's good to have you here in these evenings.
Yeah, it's nice to talk.
Yeah. So I would love it if you could talk further about the process of going beyond that identification with the separate self, going beyond the identification with individualization, and into that larger thing, whatever it's termed, and also how surrender plays into that process.
That's a great question. It's something we talk about almost every week in some way, but why not? It's kind of the most essential thing to me in all of this. So our separation is a condition that we would say we take on, but we don't really take it on, but we seem to take on when we choose the form, the physicality. And when the soul, as an extension of God's intention to participate in within the creation that God has created, with what we call more the micro perspective rather than the macro overview. And the soul comes through, and sometimes the soul is just in a overshadowing process, and where it kind of ties into creation, but it doesn't really take the form. And that happens. Many times it could be looking in. You say, well, could it be looking in from the astral, the causal, and mental, the etheric dimensions? Those dimensions that we've talked about before, which one relate the astral connecting more to the imagination, the causal connecting more to the emotions, the mental, obviously the mind, the etheric more to the unconscious. So when we take on physicality, we take on a different experience of separation than we would if, let's say, as a soul, we were operating out of the mental plane, for example. And what's the big difference when we take on the flesh and we get caught in time and space in a different way? Now, there's an experience of time and space that's different in the astral, causal, the mental, and etheric, but there's still that, because there is that reference of individuation, and there's a storyline that's being worked there. When we take on the flesh, it changes dynamically. And the biggest thing that caused that change is the illusion of finality, which is the illusion of death. So in the other planes, they recognize that the transition of form is just a change of form. It is in this reality, this physical reality, the belief in the finality of it is very unique. And that belief in the finality changes the experience, changes how we express. We just have a different way of relating to this when there's a sense of its mortality, the sense of that its demise ends us. So it's very unique in the overcoming of that. Now, you could overcome that illusion of death. Let's say if you got up to, well, if you became really conscious enough, and even in the astral plane, you kind of know, oh, death isn't real. But as long as you held the physical form, it would still push upon you, even as just a reflex, a survival reflex it just kind of goes with the body. Even consciousness that know there is no death will reflexively try to protect their body. It's just a reflex. So can it be overcome? And yeah, it can, but it takes an effort of bring a higher consciousness and a higher truth for, and then let's say for higher purpose, laying the body down, knowing that the body will die. But that doesn't eliminate the reflex. It's a choice beyond the reflex. Just we could have a reflex to flinch. We can overcome that if we set the intention, realizing, no, I'm going to go beyond this, or put ourselves in harm's way for a higher purpose or higher good. So this soul transcendence work that we do, where we're just first transcending the illusions of separation. So we progress and we become awake. It's like the process of initiation that's talked about, which is really just, in a sense, an establishing of a knowing of awakening or a knowing of truth in that next level. So you come awake into the astral, and you know, or knows right. Yeah, we'll use the word know. You know, or you perceive reality from that place, which frees you to a certain degree, from the confining illusions of the physical. And you come more awake in the causal, it frees you from the confining illusions of the astral and the physical. And You go up the mental, same thing. You're freed from the etheric. You're freed from a lot of things. Now, if you really come awake in the etheric, that's pretty significant because that level of awakening frees you from the illusion of the mind, which is powerful. And there is a kind of timelessness that comes with that. And a lot of the yogic masters, they will come into a kind of samadhi state or a nirvana type state, which is not yet truly free, but relative to the normal game that's played here, it's tremendous freedom. And if you go up and travel consciously into those places there, you'll just see a lot of yogis and Buddhic masters. Sometimes they'll be in this bliss, this ecstasy, because they've transcended the mind, which is a significant shift in dynamic. However, it hasn't freed us yet from the full experience of that. For that, we have to go beyond the illusions of the unconscious, which is the illusion of the separate self. Even in samadhi, you're still the one. There's still you having that experience. So then you go beyond the etheric and get into the soul, and now you have a real freedom. You're now free of time and space.
And free of any
You're
inbred fear of death, non-existence.
While you're there, you're free of it. As long
Yeah.
as you hold physical form and you tie back to the form, it has it as a reflex. But you'll know, if you come really awake as the soul, you'll know the eternality of yourself. You'll know, and you'll experience a unity with all other souls. And which is really a really good way to understand it is you'll understand the intentionality of God and God's participation in creation as in that individuated way. And so that is the great freedom, and it does free us when we really have that to really be freed of this condition, the physicality in the lower worlds. Now, we may still have karma there that we will pick up, but if we're established in a conscious enough way, it's easy to do. Now, however, there are options beyond that, which is there are dimensions of spirit or octaves of spirit that exist beyond that consciousness or experience of consciousness we would call the soul realm. I think John Roger, who was my teacher, and I think yours as well, so talked about, well, there's 27 levels of that. And they're different dimensions, octaves of spirit reality. So you're as that soul in that realization, you can start to go up into those octaves of, and they're different, but it's very hard to talk about the difference, except if you're really conscious, you know the difference. When you start to get up above those 27 levels, or not above them, but you start to go up them, there'll come a point you start to push up. There is something that will throw the consciousness back. Meaning it sort of will stop you from taking up a lot of the dilemmas and dramas of the individuated state or the separate state, the whole story of separation. John Rogers' term for it was the terror of God. And it can appear in different ways. Sometimes people might see it sometimes like the talons of a giant bird, or one of my children when he was a child used to have a fixation on ceiling fans and would just go into like this ecstatic joy. When I brought it to John Rogers, he said, "Oh yeah, that's reminds him of the terror of God, except his consciousness had already bridged that. So instead of being terrifying, it's an ecstatic reminder of the truth." And then there's levels that go beyond this. Now, one of the let's see what I can talk about this. If you took those 27 levels above, you could kind of compartmentalize in a strange way the first 9 levels above, the next 9, and the last 9. And there is a different overseeing aspect of God that works into those. Now, as it is clearly defined, like I'm defining 9, no, I don't think so. But it kind of works like that. And so if you are starting to move up in your consciousness and starting to bridge up to that, let's say around that 9th level, 10th, there would be a shift that would start to happen for you. And what would start to happen is you'd start to release the identification or knowing of yourself even as the soul, and start to know. You start to have the knowing of reality as the spirit knows it. Now you'd say, what's the difference? Well, let's say as a soul, I know my oneness with all other souls. I start to become aware of reality as spirit knows it. I start to know reality as spirit knows it, which is wherever spirit is, it has a knowing of it. And there's nowhere spirit's not. So it's a state beyond the soulic state. And so you actually start to give up the individuation of the soul, because the soul is a divinely ordained individuation. That it's the paradoxical, because the soul still has remembrance into the Godhead, but it also extends itself into something that creates a forgetfulness of that. So it's this marvelous experiment of God to utilize it that way. It's created this condition of time and space, and then it extends itself in as a soul, which has a simultaneous capacity to know both. And so, but there is this thing, and what happens is to have consciousness of these levels of, we'll call it these God realms, if you want to call it. To really have awareness of it, you can't really have awareness of it as the soulic form. So what happens? The soul can be taken up. You could take because God, the spirit, the traveler, could take your soul all the way up to all the levels. But for you to be conscious of it, it's difficult. Now, there's still, in these levels, you're going up the 9th, you're going up those levels, you still have some of that soulic sense. But what happens is kind of this gradual, more and more starting to sense that as the spirit, if you're going to have awareness of it. There's a lot of souls that have been taken up there, but they just don't have awareness of it yet. What allows the awareness of it is this surrendering. And that's where the magic of the word is. You start to let go and let God. You surrender to this greater truth. Or in the end, there's only God. So all the distinctions, even of the distinctions of all the levels, but also the distinctions of a soul versus the spirit are, how to say that, they exist and they serve God's purpose in existing, but in the end, there's actually, and it's like saying there's a degree of untruth or illusion to them. Like God has individuated itself. Like if you said, well, there's a God of the soul realm or these different God forms. Yeah, but the end, there's only the one God. And the highest form of that is this unmanifest God, which is pure, which is always pure potential. But out of that came everything that took tangible form, that took tangibility, took And within, to have that tangibility, there had to be distinction, there had to be differentiation. But the God of all gods exists in through all of that. But like throwing the rock in the pond, the ripples go out, different waves, these little differentiations are these different dimensions of God. And so this solic surrender is actually surrenders that particular individuation, and then starts to know reality as spirit. See, the truth is we are always spirit, but to serve the purpose of learning in time and space, we play the pretense of this differentiation first as the body, and then maybe the astral body or the causal body or the mental body, the etheric body, and ultimately even as the soulic body. In truth, we're spirit, even eventually all the souls. Like when we talk about the soul goes back into the ocean of love and mercy. They're saying the soul lets go of that, it lets go of that intent, having fulfilled that intent, and comes awake again to the reality of itself as spirit. Now it's going up into those different levels or dimension of these other, what's called levels above that soulic plane, to have consciousness that's more and more of the spirit. When you get up to the 25th level above, that point, it's like to go up from there, you must go up as spirit. I'm not saying God couldn't take the soul there, but there'd be no awareness. And by then it's like you dissolve into spirit. And yet you could still have a sense of consciousness that's distinct. And yet it'd be an octave of spirit that's different. So now we're talking about there's different octaves of spirit and different octaves of awareness. And all of this is just how it's done. Then going up from there, you can go up and get up into that. And it's just spirit at that point. Is there differentiating it? Yes. Is it something you talk about? You can lie about it all day long, but it's because there's no vocabulary, but it's the difference. And then you can get all the way up into that 27th level. Is there more? Yes, beyond the 27th level, there is. There are things you can deal with, and there are beings that come out of that serve dimensions, aspects of God. Yes, there are the silent ones. The traveler consciousness comes from above that. There's those things that are talked about, the precept, all those things they originate out of that pure unmanifest state, and with the silent ones, that they originate out of that, but they serve down into this, and they exist in everything that's manifested. So there's nowhere that traveler consciousness isn't from that point of the pure spirit in. So it's not something that we do. That's the big reversal. This is the big reason I talk so much about this. Because when Jesus said, of myself, I can do nothing. If we just listen real carefully, of myself, I can do nothing. It is the Father through me doing his own work who accomplishes all things. So what did we have with Jesus? We had a conscious that was that totally surrendered. And that total surrender was another saying there was total receptivity. Like totally given over. which allow this higher truth to live through that form and to, in a sense, transform creation through that form. So, is this the truth of every consciousness? There's only God at the end, so of course. But God may use one differentiation of itself to serve a part of its purpose. And if we want to hold on to a sense of our our uniqueness or individuation, our uniqueness or individuation may be that we will be utilized, let's say, however God would utilize that aspect of itself that is us. And so that utilization may be one day you're being used as a anchor point for the mystical traveler consciousness, like John Morton, which is like a concentration of intention to make opportunity available. What is the opportunity? The opportunity is to come conscious again of this truth of what is going on. But even if we're unconscious to it, it's still the truth that's going on. The most stunning thing in all of it for me was to come into that remembrance and realize I'd always been with God. I had never left. I knew that more than I knew anything else. That there was never any way I could ever be anything but part of God. And so you start allowing this metamorphosis of your perspective, where you start to let go of this continual reaching or searching or looking for God, and you surrender, and suddenly you become God looking. And then when that happens, now you're coming into the truth of you, we'll say of you, the truth of who you really are. That you are spirit. And you utilized this extraordinary instrumentation of the solic, which is almost like a concentrating of an intent into tangibility of physicality, and with all the emotions and imagination and the mind and all those dimensions to serve a higher purpose of the divine, and seeking to understand and know this particular version of creation. And in doing that, you serve the divine intent, and yet the divine intent is your intent. But because we fall into the condition of the forgetting of this, what the Hindus call the Maya, we could think of the ego as our sense of separate existence. We develop this egoic story, and then it creates its own intention. And so a lot of our getting free is freeing ourselves from being run by its intentionality and surrendering into the divine intentionality of God. So that's what I have for you about all that.
Oh my gosh, I'd be hard pressed to articulate clearly.
Well, you don't need to. Let's receive of it.
Thank you.
One of the reasons I do this is I discovered I didn't really talk about this for a long time. I mean, I talked to John Roger about it, but that was quite a few years ago when I really came into this. And then it was more like, so I would talk to him about it, and occasionally there would be people come forward who were ready, and I would share and support. And the thing I kept finding out is that while I was talking about it, the Spirit was showing it to them.
Yes.
And that's part of why I'm willing to do this, because I'm talking about it. but the truth is being extended out of spirit, not by me, but by out of the spirit.
Yes.
So I'm willing to help do my part, which is to just show up and talk and allow, in my own limited way, the Father to do its own work. But JR did make um, available or offer to many, 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 many souls that he would work with them above the soul if they wanted. Or they could ask him, and he would. And so I think this is part of that, just helping to support that. So I hope
Seems
that
that
helps.
way to me right now.
Yeah. Well, bless you, my friend.
And bless you and thank you. Glad this is recorded. Go back and
Yeah.
thank
Well,
you.
our minds will try and take it apart and understand it, but eventually that's not a bad thing. But eventually it's to really come into the knowing, getting beyond the mind is a crucial thing.
Yeah, and I in terms of recording, I don't have much hope of understanding at that level, but look to the possibility that there's also door openings just listening to it again.
Oh yeah, I would think so. I mean, I'm watching it happen, not just with you, but all the people. Now, am I doing it? Not all the detail, no, but in the spirit, I can see it doing that. It's just what's so. But it's not a I thing. Obviously, I can't do this. I'm just down here. I'm just another sack of meat like everybody else. But there is this truth that lives and moves in all of us, and that we are all destined to come conscious. And as we come conscious of it, we can assist other consciousness to come conscious of it. Bless you, my friend.
Bless you too. Thank you.
Jennifer,
Michael,
how? Yeah,
Michael,
you and
please, may I share a little information before you share with Jennifer?
sure.
Thank you. First, I'd like to quickly share an awareness. I'm so clear in the guidelines for questions of what not to ask, and I offer this up especially for those who are new and those who may experience the archives anew. Michael is available for personal questions and to assist with clearings, and at the awaketolove.com website is a link to book an appointment with Michael with a very flexible schedule through the week. I choose to book a standing appointment wherein we do the clearing that needs to be cleared. But for years, Michael has been my one-on-one mentor towards greater remembrance, for which I'm so grateful. Last week, I had the opportunity to share some information for those who would be inspired to donate financially to support Michael's good works. Of course, it's completely voluntary. We've got the steps a little more organized. I'm going to quickly review them here. First, your voluntary donations, small and large, sustain this free gathering and newsletters, allowing us to continue sharing spiritual teachings that benefit individuals and the community. Now we have refined the link. It's now highly functional with a few additional choices that we posted last week. It took a little while to populate, and it is awaketolove.com/donate. And I'd like to give you a quick peek at the work in progress. We're looking by next week to have more choices for those forms of payment that are most friendly to you. So if you go there now, you'll find a link to donate using PayPal. Remember, if you have a PayPal account, fine, but that's also where you can use debit cards and credit cards on the secure PayPal site. For those who have done sessions with Michael, you can call or email Awake to Love and ask them to make a donation using your card on file. And this link, awaketolove.com/donate, has an address for anyone who would like to mail a check. So much light and much gratitude. Thank you, Michael. Shall we bring Jennifer even more live?
Hmm.
There we go.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Michael. God
Hello,
bless.
Jennifer.
There's a couple things that are coming up. One of them is about, you talked about the spiritual being that came forward tonight. So I'm on intercessory prayer quite a bit. And is
Mm.
this sort of an intention tonight that could be for prayer for the making a wiser choice, a more uplifting choice? And then
I'm not,
also vignettes of consciousness coming forward. I don't know how to
I'm not
describe it.
sure. I'm not sure your question, but I think
Okay, yeah.
intercessory prayer is and heart, prayer lists or something that are wonderful. And, the teaching says pray unceasingly. So why wouldn't we want to utilize things? But the nice thing about that is it helps, in a sense, target those places and people that are most in need of support. So yeah, this, I think the messaging that came forward tonight was from a consciousness that has a great level of responsibility related to this world, but also a lot of the a lot of the worlds within this creation. And so we're in a particularly significant karmic time. So I wasn't expecting it to come in like that, but when it did, I wasn't going to fight it.
Yeah.
So
Mhm. Okay. Michael, is this something to do with our dreams also? It seems like it's not even dreams. The last couple of years, I've talked to friends, and my experience has been it's not even dreams, it's like experiences. And coming in, I said, like, it was a Rodney King night. I feel like, where was I? What happened? And it seems like that the dream state and this level are sort of blending, where there's like vignettes of consciousness from the previous night or whatever being brought forward, but I can't remember anything either. A lot of us, we can't remember what's going on in our dream state. It's just very
mm,
different.
well, you may be able to sense it. There's
Yeah.
there's a lot going on in this world and on this level, but there's a lot going on in the other levels too. There's particularly for those of us participating in this world, there is, it's almost like saying there's a great battle between these two approaches. Or the old approach is doing karma under law, eye for an eye.
Mhm.
You reap what you sow, to the exactitude of it. And the newer approach says, well, the insistence upon this exactitude of it is interfering with God's true intention in making this all come about, which is the learning. Because souls are getting caught in sort of this endless cycle of repeating things without, it's like they've got the lesson, but they're still going through stuff because it fulfills a requirement. So remember John Rogers saying evil is unnecessary experience. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of unnecessary experience happening. So there's new option. this approach where learning is seen as the most significant thing. And when learning is taking place, that opens the door for forgiveness and for grace. And then the karma can be balanced in other ways without needing to be an eye for an eye. Like I'd rather work out a lot of this hard karma in my dreams than do it here.
Mm-hmm.
But if I have to do it here to get the lesson, then that's how it has to be. But under the karmic law, I don't have a choice. If I did it here, it has to be, I have to get the consequence here. So
And
it's inefficient in terms of God's intention. There is no waste in spirit, so it's creating, according to the higher outcome of the spirit, it's wasteful. So this other opportunity is being made available into this world, and it's a beautiful thing that we have and more available. But there's a pushback that wants to, there's a lot of power still in this creation that wants to keep things under the karmic law. And there are great numbers of beings that are very aligned to that karmic law and to the architects of that plan of the karmic law and those who would uphold it. And they are being fed magnetically by magnetic light and magnetic energy empowerment into this creation to try and hold the creation into a situation where everything is done an eye for an eye. And so there's these two different approaches, and there is more and more non-magnetic light being poured into the earth, into this condition, which is in alignment with this grace plan that is kind of going up against the magnetic. And every consciousness is then, in a sense, dealing with this opportunity, but also this struggle, because it's like two opportunities: the opportunity that the conscious is more familiar with, and this other opportunity which offers the consciousness greater freedom and its greater approach. And there are many consciousnesses that will still be manipulatable to choose back into that old, harder way. And that more and more consciousnesses are ready for this higher way, this more efficient way. So a lot of the things you're experiencing in your consciousness in the dream state are a combination of you working out karma, but also also reflections of you serving this greater opportunity. And this is true for most of us. So I don't think we have to understand it, just have to accept it and surrender to it. And by doing the spiritual work, doing the spiritual exercise, doing the things that you know how to do to help you become more conscious, eventually a knowing of what this is will start to become present. And you will suddenly maybe have an experience of being one with that force that is bringing the remembrance.
Is there sometimes a melancholy or a sentimentality about this level? I know as the attachments are leaving, they're pretty much willing to give up everything. Is there a way to, it's just accepting it, loving it, and it's just wondering if our limiting beliefs, if a limiting belief would hinder our spiritual progression. It seems like spirit is so much more than the mind. I mean, obviously it's more than the mind, but on any level, making it this level difficult.
Yeah. I mean, limiting beliefs can distract us from remembrance, distract us from the truth, and distract us from fully participating with that which is being offered to help bring us conscious. But that isn't new. Limiting beliefs, our desire, nature, all these things. I mean, limiting beliefs are saying the mind in its nature can distract us. Absolutely. Our desire patterns, you mean our emotions can, absolutely. Our fantasies, our dreams, absolutely. But that's not new. That's how it's been. This creation is set up with a mechanistic, good way to say, mechanistic process in play to try and sort of hold the soul into focus upon it and engagement with it, as long as it can hold the soul into engagement with it. And God not only has allowed that, but God set that all up because it has served God's purpose to have the souls engaged in this. Now, there are different ways of describing that, which would relentlessly hold our souls to this, but the name I will use is one that I've heard used many times, is the call power. The call power is then like this thing that will try and bind the souls to this. That thing that's sometimes called the Luciferian, which is related to this karmic law of an eye for an eye. It actually is different from the call power in that it would actually let you extend beyond this and get free of this. It just wants you, insists that you must do it an eye for an eye under the karmic law. He says, no, you can transcend this. You just have to do it the way I've said it. It's been set up, which is by the sweat of your brow, an eye for an eye, which is extremely difficult. And so grace, mercy, whatever we call it, God said, this was an experiment. It's not working quite the way we hoped. Well, we have an option. It's like having an old computer and says, yeah, when we're going to update and put this new thing in, and suddenly, wow, this new drive. It's almost like saying under the Luciferian, we were all working with typewriters. And they said, oh, yeah, but it's so, yeah, I'm going to just computers. You started going, whoa. But then there'll be those people, they'll convince you, no, there's bad things about these computers and just you can't rely upon them. Stay with old reliable, that typewriter. And then, but once you really start participating with the computer, you realize, forget the typewriter. Oh my gosh. It's so much more effective. It's so much helping me achieve and accomplish what I truly want. So, but the inventor of the typewriter is highly invested in having a market for the typewriters. So there's an incredible sales pitch that still goes on, and a lot of consciousnesses are still very attached or addicted to their old typewriter. Just like we see people holding on to stuff that clearly isn't working because it's familiar. So let's move forward. Let's not go back. Bless you.
Thank you, Michael. God bless.
Bless you, Jennifer.
Love you.
Love you too. I don't know where
Michael,
we are.
we're at
Oh
7:39
my
now.
goodness. I guess we're going to call it a night. All right. Okay, so let's do a little wrap up. I hope this has been interesting for people. I can't tell. I'm not watching you personally. I'm just watching the light, but dearest Lord, Thank you for your support, your guidance, and the blessing you've extended to us here. We do thank you, dear Lord Jesus, also for opening a door of possibility and potential for this greater awakening, for this faster, higher, truer realization of the divine. We ask that any imbalance or karma that has been let go of here be taken into light and dispersed. We ask that you continue to orchestrate in your divine way our unfolding, our awakening, our coming present, becoming conscious of the divine reality, of the truth of your oneness with us and our oneness with you, and the truth of your purpose and your plan as it unfolds in our world as we know it and in the world beyond our conscious knowing. We ask this, we ask for grace, we ask for your blessing upon this planet. We're so grateful that you've given this chance to come together, to share, to learn, and to grow, and to celebrate your presence with us. God bless us all. Amen. Berish Basha.